The text message arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, jolting me awake with its harsh blue glow. Emergency family meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Your presence is required. Come prepared to contribute $3,000 to save this family. Mom, I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in the darkness of my studio apartment. $3,000. The exact amount I'd been saving for months to finally move out of this cramped space and into something decent. The exact amount Mom somehow knew I had tucked away in my emergency fund. What I didn't know then was that this wasn't just another family crisis. It was the beginning of the most painful lesson I'd ever learned about the difference between family and manipulation. And by the time it was over, I discovered that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones willing to destroy you to save themselves. The address Mom texted leads me to a part of town I haven't visited since high school, where chain restaurants line the highway and strip malls anchor every corner. Family meeting at Denny's isn't exactly normal protocol, but nothing about this day feels normal. I spot them immediately through the restaurant's yellowed windows. Mom sits across from my younger sister Brooklyn in a corner booth, their heads bent together in intense conversation. Beside Brooklyn, her boyfriend Trevor fidgets with his phone, occasionally glancing toward the parking lot like he's watching for someone. The hostess barely looks up as I walk past her station. Mom waves me over with forced enthusiasm, her smile too bright for the fluorescent lighting. Rachel. Perfect timing, honey. We just ordered coffee. I slide into the booth across from them, noting the way Brooklyn avoids eye contact. She's wearing designer sunglasses despite being indoors, which usually means she's either hungover or hiding something. Given the urgency of this meeting, I'm betting on both. So what's the emergency? I ask, cutting straight to the point. Mom's hands flutter nervously around her purse. Well, it's not exactly an emergency. More like an opportunity that requires quick thinking. Trevor snorts softly, earning a sharp look from Brooklyn. There's something different about their usual dynamic, an edge of desperation that wasn't there during our last family dinner 2 months ago. Brooklyn's been offered an incredible chance, Mom continues, her voice taking on the same tone she used when trying to convince me to loan Brooklyn money for her photography business that consisted mainly of Instagram filters and borrowed equipment. What kind of chance? Brooklyn finally removes her sunglasses, revealing eyes that are indeed bloodshot and tired. There's this modeling agency in Miami. They want to sign me for a major campaign, but I need to be there by Friday for the photo shoot. I study my sister's face, looking for signs of the truth beneath the rehearsed explanation. Brooklyn is pretty enough, blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of conventional attractiveness that photographs well. But she's also 24 years old with no professional modeling experience and a habit of chasing get-rich-quick schemes that inevitably require family funding. That sounds exciting, I say carefully. What company? Coastal Dreams Marketing. Trevor answers quickly, as if he's been waiting for this question. They handle campaigns for major resort chains throughout the Southeast. The name means nothing to me, but Trevor delivers it with the confidence of someone who's done his homework. Still, something feels off about the timeline and urgency. So, what do you need from me? Mom reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. The modeling contract requires a deposit to secure Brooklyn's participation. It's a standard industry practice, shows commitment from both sides. How much? $3,000. The number hits exactly as I expected. The same amount mentioned in Mom's cryptic text message. The same amount sitting in my savings account that I've been carefully building to escape my cramped studio apartment. $3,000 seems like a lot for a deposit, I say slowly. Brooklyn's eyes fill with tears on cue. I know it's a huge ask. Ratch. But this could change everything for me. Real modeling work, professional contacts, maybe even enough money to help Mom with her rent issues. Mom's rent issues. Another familiar refrain in our family's ongoing financial drama. 6 months ago, it was a car repairs. Before that, medical bills. There's always something requiring immediate family assistance, and somehow I'm always the designated solution. I don't have $3,000 to spare, I lie, testing their reaction. The temperature at the table drops noticeably. Mom's face crumples with disappointment that seems genuine enough, but Brooklyn's response is more calculated. Come on, Rachel. You make good money at the insurance company, you live in that tiny apartment with no expenses. Where else is your money going? The accusation stings because it contains enough truth to feel personal. I do live modestly, sacrificing space and comfort to build savings. But the implication that my careful financial planning somehow obligates me to fund Brooklyn's latest venture crosses a line. I have my own goals for that money, I say firmly. Trevor leans forward, inserting himself into family business with the presumption of someone who's been dating Brooklyn for 8 months and thinks that grants him decision-making authority. Look, Rachel, this isn't just about Brooklyn. Your mom's landlord has been threatening eviction for 2 months now. If Brooklyn lands this contract, she can help cover rent while your mom gets back on her feet. I turn to Mom, whose face has gone pale. You're facing eviction? It's not that serious, she says quickly. Just a little behind on rent. These things happen. How behind? The silence stretches uncomfortably before Brooklyn answers. 4 months. But like Trevor said, if I get this modeling job, we can catch everything up and still have money left. Over. 4 months behind on rent. My mother has been facing homelessness for 4 months and never mentioned it during our weekly phone calls or monthly family dinners. Yet somehow my savings account balance is common knowledge. Why didn't you tell me about the rent situation? Mom's eyes fill with tears that look more genuine than Brooklyn's theatrical display. I didn't want to worry you, sweetheart. You work so hard, and you've helped us so many times before. I thought I could handle this on my own. The manipulation is subtle but effective. Praise for my work ethic, acknowledgement of past financial assistance, and the implication that asking for help is somehow protecting me from stress. It's a masterclass in family guilt wrapped in maternal concern. So let me understand this. I say, looking around the table. Brooklyn needs $3,000 for a modeling deposit, Mom needs money for back rent, and somehow these two problems solve each other if I provide the funding. It's not charity, Brooklyn says defensively. It's an investment. Once I start making real money from modeling, I'll pay you back with interest. I've heard similar promises before. The photography business that was going to revolutionize social media marketing. The online boutique that was going to corner the market on vintage-inspired accessories. The life coaching certification that was going to help Brooklyn build a client base of successful women. None of those ventures generated enough revenue to repay my initial investments, but each came with the same earnest promises about future success and family loyalty. I need to think about this, I say finally. The reaction is immediate and coordinated. Mom's face falls with disappointment. Brooklyn's eyes flash with anger before she remembers to look hurt instead of hostile. Trevor checks his phone with obvious irritation. The deadline is tomorrow morning, Brooklyn says, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. The agency needs confirmation by 9 a.m. or they move on to the next candidate. Another artificial deadline designed to prevent careful consideration or independent research. I've learned to recognize these pressure tactics from years of family financial emergencies that somehow always require immediate solutions. Then I guess you'll have my answer tomorrow morning, I reply, sliding out of the booth. As I walk toward the parking lot, I hear Brooklyn's voice rise behind me. She's being selfish, Mom. After everything this family has done for her. I don't turn around to respond, but the accusation follows me to my car. In Brooklyn's mind, my reluctance to fund her latest scheme represents selfishness rather than self-preservation. The distinction has always been lost on my family. The drive home gives me time to process the evening's revelations. $3,000 for a modeling deposit that may or may not be legitimate. 4 months of unpaid rent that somehow became my responsibility to resolve. A sister who views my savings as a family resource rather than personal property, but most troubling is the coordination of their approach. The choice of venue, the timing of revelations, the synchronized emotional appeals. This wasn't a spontaneous family crisis, it was a carefully orchestrated presentation designed to extract money from someone they see as the family bank. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Back in my studio apartment, I sit on my secondhand couch and stare at the bank statement I printed last week. $3,047. Enough to cover Brooklyn's deposit with $47 to spare. Enough to help Mom avoid eviction, if that's really what this is about, but also enough to finally escape this cramped space and move into the one-bedroom apartment I've been coveting for months. Enough to stop sharing walls with neighbors who blast music until 2 a.m. and cook fish in the hallway. Enough to have a real kitchen instead of a hot plate and mini fridge. The choice isn't just about money, it's about whether I continue enabling my family's financial irresponsibility or finally prioritize my own needs and goals. My phone buzzes with a text from Mom. Please don't let pride destroy Brooklyn's opportunity. Family is supposed to support each other. I stare at the message, noting how quickly my legitimate concerns have been reframed as character flaws. Pride, selfishness, lack of family loyalty, the usual accusations deployed when financial boundaries are enforced. Tomorrow morning, I'll give them my answer. But tonight, I'm going to do some research into Coastal Dreams marketing and see if Brooklyn's opportunity is real or just another expensive fantasy funded by family guilt. The first red flag appears at 6:23 a.m. when I search for Coastal Dreams Marketing Miami and find exactly 3 results. A barebones website with stock photos and generic text about luxury lifestyle brand partnerships. A single Yelp review from 2 weeks ago calling them professional and responsive. And a Better Business Bureau listing with no rating and 0 customer complaints, which in itself is suspicious for any company claiming to handle major resort campaigns. I dig deeper, using the research skills I developed during my business degree. The company's registration shows it was incorporated just 3 months ago in Delaware, a common choice for businesses seeking privacy and minimal disclosure requirements. The listed address traces to a virtual office space that rents mailboxes and conference rooms by the hour. Most telling is the website's metadata, which reveals the site was built using a template purchased from a design marketplace called Instant Business Solutions. Every photo is watermarked with stock photography credits. Even the testimonials are generic enough to apply to any industry. By 7 a.m., I'm convinced Coastal Dreams marketing exists primarily on paper and browser screens. But I need more evidence before confronting my family with accusations that could permanently damage our relationships. My phone rings as I'm getting ready for work. Brooklyn's name flashes on the screen, right on schedule for the morning guilt campaign. "Rachel, I couldn't sleep all night thinking about yesterday," she says, her voice thick with what might be genuine emotion or carefully practiced performance. "I know $3,000 is a lot to ask, but this really could change everything for our family. Tell me more about how you found this modeling agency." A pause. Too long for someone with a straightforward answer. Trevor's cousin Marcus works in entertainment marketing down in Miami. He heard about the opportunity through his network and thought I'd be perfect for their campaign aesthetic. Trevor's cousin Marcus. Another name to research, another thread to pull in what's becoming an increasingly tangled web of convenient connections and perfect timing. What kind of campaign is it exactly? Luxury resort photography for their spring advertising rollout. They need models who look approachable but sophisticated, like someone guests would want to have a poolside conversation with. The description is detailed enough to sound legitimate while remaining vague enough to avoid specific verification. Brooklyn has clearly rehearsed this explanation, which raises more questions about who coached her and why. "I'm still thinking about it," I tell her. "Rachel, please don't overthink this. Sometimes opportunities come along that require faith and quick action. If you analyze everything to death, you miss out on the good stuff." After hanging up, I call in sick to work and spend the morning becoming a detective in my own family drama. Marcus Williams, Trevor's supposed cousin, doesn't appear in any Miami entertainment industry directories. The phone number Brooklyn provided goes to a Google Voice account with a generic voicemail greeting. More concerning is what I discover about Trevor's background through social media archaeology. His Instagram shows a pattern of expensive purchases, followed by financial crashes. Designer clothes and luxury car photos from 6 months ago, followed by posts about temporary setbacks and rebuilding. His LinkedIn profile lists 3 different sales jobs in the past year, each lasting less than 4 months. The picture emerging isn't of a successful young man with industry connections, but someone struggling with money management and potentially desperate enough to involve his girlfriend's family in whatever scheme might generate quick cash. My research is interrupted by Mom's unannounced visit at noon. She stands at my door holding a plastic container of homemade cookies and wearing the expression she used when I was 12 and struggling with math homework. "I brought your favorites," she says, settling onto my couch without invitation. "Chocolate chip with sea salt, just like you always request for your birthday." The cookies are still warm, which means she baked them specifically for this visit. The gesture is sweet and manipulative in equal measure, a reminder of maternal care designed to soften my resistance to financial demands. "Mom, we need to talk about your rent situation." Her face crumbles with embarrassment. "Oh honey, that's not your burden to carry. Brooklyn and I will figure something out." 4 months behind isn't something you figure out. It's something that gets you evicted and destroys your credit for years. She fidgets with her purse strap, avoiding eye contact. "I've been trying to work extra shifts at the hospital, but they keep cutting hours. And Brooklyn helps when she can, but her retail job barely covers her own expenses. Mom works as a part-time medical assistant at a clinic across town. The job provides just enough income to maintain the illusion of financial stability while leaving her vulnerable to any unexpected expense or reduction in hours. Why didn't you ask me for help months ago? Before it became a crisis?" "Because you've already done so much for this family. You helped with Brooklyn's car payments when she was struggling. You covered my insurance deductible after the fender bender. You bought school supplies when Brooklyn was finishing her marketing certificate. I didn't want to be that mother who always has her hand out. The guilt is expertly applied. A recitation of past generosity designed to establish precedent for continued financial support. But what strikes me is how these incidents have been reframed as investments in family stability rather than what they actually were, bailouts from poor financial decisions. What's your monthly rent? $850. With late fees, I owe about $3,600 total. The math doesn't work. If Brooklyn's modeling opportunity provides enough money to catch up rent and have money left over, she'd need to earn significantly more than $3,000 from a single photo shoot. Either the family financial situation is worse than they're admitting, or the modeling opportunity is more lucrative than any legitimate agency would offer an inexperienced model. Mom, I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there more to this financial situation than just rent? She breaks down completely, tears streaming as months of hidden stress finally surface. The car payment is 2 months behind. The electric company sent a disconnect notice. I have medical bills from when I had that chest pain scare in August. And Brooklyn has some credit card debt that's gotten out of hand. The full picture emerges like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. This isn't about one modeling opportunity saving the day. This is about a family drowning in multiple financial obligations, with my $3,000 representing a temporary band-aid on much larger problems. How much does Brooklyn owe on credit cards? I don't know exactly. She's embarrassed about it. But she mentioned something about minimum payments being more than she can afford. That afternoon, I drive to the address Mom gave me for her apartment complex. Riverside Gardens isn't the worst place I've seen, but it's clearly struggling. The parking lot lights are broken. The playground equipment shows rust stains and missing parts. A handwritten sign in the leasing office window advertises move-in specials in increasingly desperate terms. I find Mom's building and count the units with eviction notices posted on front doors. 7 out of 12 apartments show official legal documents, suggesting the entire complex is dealing with residents who can't afford rent increases or unemployment issues. The reality is sobering. Mom isn't facing eviction because of personal financial irresponsibility. She's facing eviction because she's living in poverty, working a job that doesn't provide enough income to cover basic living expenses, and supporting an adult daughter who has accumulated debt faster than income. Brooklyn's modeling opportunity isn't a solution to this systemic problem. Even if legitimate, it would provide temporary relief while leaving the underlying issues unresolved. Within months, they'd be facing similar financial crises with even fewer options. That evening, Trevor calls me directly for the first time. Rachel, I know this is awkward, but I feel like I need to be straight with you about something. What's that? Brooklyn is really struggling with self-worth issues. She's always felt like she's in your shadow, successful career, financial stability, independence. This modeling thing isn't just about money for her. It's about proving she can contribute something meaningful to the family. The psychological manipulation is more sophisticated than I expected from Trevor. He's reframing my potential refusal as an attack on Brooklyn's self-esteem rather than a reasonable response to a questionable financial request. Trevor, I'm concerned that this opportunity might not be legitimate. I get why you'd be skeptical. There are a lot of scams out there. But Marcus has been working with these people for months. He's seen their other campaigns, met their clients. This is real. Can I speak with Marcus directly? Another pause. He's actually traveling for work this week. Some big client presentation in Las Vegas. But I can have him call you when he gets back. Every answer creates more questions. Every explanation requires additional verification that conveniently isn't available. The pattern is classic advance fee fraud, but executed by people I've known my entire life. My phone buzzes with a group text including Mom, Brooklyn, and Trevor. Family dinner tomorrow night 6 p.m. Mom's place. We need to finalize plans for Brooklyn's opportunity. Hope you're ready to support your sister's dreams. Red heart. The emoji feels particularly insulting given the circumstances. As if adding a heart symbol somehow transforms financial manipulation into family solidarity. I screenshot the message and add it to the growing folder of evidence I'm compiling. Tomorrow night's dinner will likely be the final pressure campaign before they expect my answer. I need to be prepared for every emotional manipulation they might deploy, but first, I have one more research avenue to explore. If this is really about helping the family, if Brooklyn and Trevor genuinely believe this opportunity is legitimate, then they shouldn't object to reasonable verification steps. I composed a careful text message. Before tomorrow's dinner, I'd like to see the modeling contract Brooklyn would be signing. Also, can someone provide contact information for the agency so I can verify details directly? The response comes within minutes from Brooklyn: the contract is confidential until the deposit is paid. Industry standard to prevent competitors from poaching talent. And the agency doesn't take calls from family members, too many parents trying to micromanage their kids' careers. Every legitimate concern I raise is met with convenient explanations that prevent verification. Every reasonable request for documentation is blocked by industry practices that supposedly protect Brooklyn's interests while coincidentally making fraud easier to execute. Tomorrow night, they'll expect my answer. But tonight, I'm going to make some phone calls that might change everything about this family crisis. The call to Detective Jennifer Hayes at the Miami-Dade Police Department's Fraud Division comes after 2 hours of navigating phone trees and being transferred between departments. When I finally reach someone willing to listen, her response chills me to the bone. "We've had 17 reports this quarter matching that exact pattern," Detective Hayes says, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who's seen this too many times. Fake modeling agencies, virtual offices, advance fee scams targeting families. The setup you're describing is textbook, right down to the cousin who supposedly has industry connections. What usually happens to the victims? They wire the money and never hear from the agency again. Sometimes the scammers maintain contact for a few weeks, stringing families along with promises of contracts being finalized or photo shoots being rescheduled. But the money is always gone within hours of the initial transfer. My stomach clenches. Are family members ever involved knowingly? More often than you'd think. Sometimes it starts as a legitimate attempt to find opportunities. But when desperate people discover easy marks within their own families, the temptation becomes overwhelming. We've seen cases where children set up elaborate cons to steal from parents, siblings manipulate each other, even grandparents targeting their own grandchildren's college funds. The possibility that Brooklyn and Trevor aren't just naive victims, but active participants in fraud against our family opens up a darker interpretation of recent events. The convenient timing, the pressure tactics, the way every verification attempt has been blocked, all of it could indicate intentional deception, rather than misguided hope. What should I do? If you believe a crime is being committed, you can file a report. But family fraud cases are complicated because victims often refuse to cooperate once they realize their loved ones are involved. Our advice is usually to protect yourself first, then decide how much you're willing to risk trying to save others. After ending the call, I sit in my car outside the police station, trying to process the weight of Detective Hayes' words. Protect yourself first. The advice sounds cold until I consider the alternative, losing my savings to a scam that enriches strangers while leaving my family even more desperate and vulnerable than before. My next stop is First National Bank, where I've maintained accounts since college. Amanda Chen, the branch manager, listens patiently as I explain my situation without naming specific family members. "You're being smart to ask these questions," Amanda says, pulling up my account information on her computer. "We see financial, elder abuse and family fraud constantly. The emotional manipulation makes people second-guess their instincts even when the red flags are obvious. Is there a way to protect my money without completely cutting off access?" Amanda explains several options. I can move funds to a different account that requires additional verification for withdrawals. I can set up alerts for any transactions over a certain amount. Most importantly, I can establish a cooling-off period for large transfers, giving myself time to reconsider decisions made under pressure. "There's one more thing I'd recommend," Amanda continues. "If you're genuinely concerned about family members facing eviction or utility disconnection, you can verify those situations directly with landlords and service providers. Real debts have real documentation." The suggestion sparks an idea that could resolve my uncertainty once and for all. If Mom's rent situation is legitimate, her landlord will have records. If Brooklyn's credit card debt is real, statements exist. I can help my family with verified financial emergencies while avoiding participation in potential fraud. That afternoon, I drive back to Riverside Gardens and locate the leasing office. The property manager, Mrs. Patricia Williams, is a woman in her 60s who clearly takes pride in maintaining the complex despite its obvious financial challenges. "I can't discuss specific tenant information," she says when I identify myself as Mom's daughter. "But I can tell you generally that we work with residents who are experiencing temporary hardship. We'd rather help people catch up than go through expensive eviction processes." "Is there a payment plan option for someone who's several months behind?" "Depends on the circumstances and the tenant's payment history. Someone with a good track record who hits a rough patch gets different consideration than someone with chronic late payments." Mrs. Williams' diplomatic language suggests Mom's situation might be more nuanced than the family crisis narrative I've been hearing. I leave my contact information and ask her to have mom call me if she wants help exploring payment plan options. The credit card situation proves more complicated to verify. Brooklyn's mail comes to her own apartment, and requesting access to her financial statements would require direct confrontation about my suspicions. Instead, I researched typical credit card debt levels for someone in Brooklyn's demographic. According to financial industry data, the average credit card debt for Americans aged 20 to 29 is approximately $4,200. For someone working retail with minimal financial education, debt could easily reach $8,000 to $10,000 if minimum payments become unmanageable. The numbers suggest Brooklyn's debt problems could be real even if the modeling solution is fraudulent. That evening, I meet my best friend Stephanie for dinner at our usual spot downtown. We've known each other since college, and she's one of the few people who understands my family's complicated financial dynamics. "Rachel, you look exhausted," she says, studying my face across the table. "What's going on?" I explain the situation carefully, omitting identifying details but conveying the essential dilemma. Stephanie listens without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions that help me organize my thoughts. "Here's what I'm hearing," she says finally. "Your family has real financial problems that require real solutions. But they're also potentially involved in a scam that would steal your money without solving anything. Those are two separate issues." "Meaning what?" "Meaning you can help with legitimate emergencies without participating in fraud. Pay the landlord directly if rent is really behind. Pay utility companies directly if services are being disconnected. But don't hand cash to family members for opportunities that can't be verified." The distinction is crucial. I can be supportive without being gullible, generous without being exploited. The key is maintaining control over how my money is used while still addressing genuine family needs. "There's something else to consider," Stephanie continues. "If Brooklyn and Trevor are running a scam, they're not going to stop with $3,000. They'll be back with bigger requests, more urgent deadlines, more elaborate emotional manipulation. You need to establish boundaries now or this pattern will continue indefinitely." The warning resonates because I've seen similar escalation in other family financial situations. Small loans become larger loans. Temporary assistance becomes permanent dependency. Emergency funding becomes expected entitlement. After dinner, I spend the evening researching family financial fraud prevention strategies. The resources are depressingly extensive, suggesting this problem affects more families than I'd realized. The most valuable advice comes from a financial counselor's blog post about loving detachment, the practice of caring about family members while refusing to enable destructive behaviors. The author recommends offering practical help rather than money, emotional support rather than financial bailouts, and professional resources rather than personal solutions. By midnight, I've developed a strategy for tomorrow's family dinner. I'll offer to help verify and address legitimate financial emergencies while declining participation in unverifiable opportunities. If mom's rent situation is real, I'll work directly with her landlord on payment arrangements. If Brooklyn's debt problems are genuine, I'll help her contact credit counseling services, but I won't provide cash for modeling deposits, business opportunities, or any other scheme that requires blind faith instead of reasonable verification. The decision feels both generous and protective, a way to support my family without enabling potential fraud. Whether they'll see it that way remains to be discovered. My phone buzzes with a text from Brooklyn. "Can't wait for tomorrow night. I have so much to share about the Miami opportunity. This is going to change everything for our family." Glowing star. The star emoji feels particularly ironic given what I've learned about the entertainment industry scam patterns. But looking at the message, I realize something important. Whether Brooklyn is an innocent victim or willing participant, she's built her emotional well-being around this opportunity being real. Tomorrow night's conversation will be more than just a financial negotiation. It will be a test of whether our family relationships can survive the collision between hope and reality, between desperate dreams and practical limitations. I screenshot Brooklyn's message and add it to my growing documentation file. If this situation does involve fraud, I want records of every communication, every pressure tactic, every emotional manipulation attempt, but more than evidence gathering, I want to understand how people I've loved my entire life could put me in a position where protecting myself requires suspecting their motives. The answer to that question might hurt more than losing the money ever could. Mom's apartment feels different when I arrive for the family dinner. The usual clutter has been cleared away, replaced by a formal table setting that includes cloth napkins and the good china reserved for holidays. Fresh flowers sit in a vase I've never seen before, and the scent of her famous pot roast fills the air, my childhood comfort food that she rarely makes anymore due to the expense. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Mom says, greeting me with a hug that lasts longer than usual. She's wearing makeup and a dress instead of her typical sweatpants, clearly treating this evening as a special occasion worthy of celebration. Brooklyn emerges from the bathroom looking polished in a way that suggests professional styling. Her hair is perfectly curled, her makeup flawless, her outfit carefully chosen to project success and confidence. She looks like someone ready for a modeling audition, which I realize is probably intentional. Rachel. I'm so excited to share everything with you, Brooklyn gushes, pulling me into the living room where Trevor sits surrounded by what appears to be professional documentation. Glossy brochures, official-looking contracts, and even a tablet displaying what looks like a virtual tour of Miami facilities. The presentation has clearly been upgraded since our last meeting. Whatever Trevor's real background, he's invested significant time and possibly money into making this opportunity appear legitimate. The attention to detail is both impressive and deeply troubling. Before we start, I announce, pulling out my own folder, I've done some research and prepared some questions that should help us all feel confident about moving forward. The room's energy shifts subtly. Brooklyn's smile becomes more strained. Trevor's confident posture tightens almost imperceptibly. Mom continues bustling in the kitchen, but I notice her movements have become more hurried. Of course, Trevor says smoothly. We want you to feel completely comfortable with every aspect of this opportunity. I open my folder and remove the first document, a standard modeling contract template I downloaded from a legitimate talent agency's website. I found this industry standard contract online. Can we compare it to what Brooklyn would be signing? Trevor's face remains neutral, but he takes longer than necessary to respond. Every agency has their own contract format. The important thing is that the terms are favorable to Brooklyn. Absolutely. That's why I'd like to review the specific terms before any money changes hands. Brooklyn jumps in with practiced enthusiasm. The contract is being finalized tonight. The agency said they'll email it once they receive confirmation about the deposit. They don't want to waste time on paperwork if we're not serious about proceeding. Another convenient excuse that prevents verification. I make a note on my pad, ensuring everyone sees me documenting their responses. That's interesting. In my research, I found that legitimate agencies typically provide contracts before requesting deposits. It's considered a red flag when money is required before terms are disclosed. The tension in the room becomes palpable. Mom emerges from the kitchen carrying a serving tray, her hands shaking slightly as she sets it down. Rachel, honey, maybe. We're overcomplicating this, she says, her voice carrying a note of desperation. Sometimes opportunities require faith. I turn to face her directly. Mom, I spoke with your property manager yesterday. Mrs. Williams mentioned that payment plans are available for tenants with good payment histories. Have you explored that option? Mom's face goes pale. You talked to Mrs. Williams? Without telling me? I wanted to understand all the available options for helping with rent. She seemed very willing to work with you on a manageable payment schedule. The revelation that I've been independently verifying their claims creates visible panic. Brooklyn and Trevor exchange glances that confirm my worst suspicions. They weren't expecting me to investigate beyond their carefully constructed narrative. The thing is, I continue, pulling out another document I'd be happy to help with. Verified rent payments directly to your landlord. I can also assist with utility bills by paying providers directly. What I won't do is provide cash for opportunities that can't be verified in advance. Trevor's mask finally slips. Rachel, you're missing the point. This isn't about charity or paying bills. This is about investing in Brooklyn's future, supporting her dreams, helping her become financially independent. Which is exactly why I want to ensure the investment is legitimate. If this modeling opportunity is real, the agency will have no problem providing references, contract details, and direct contact information. Brooklyn's tears appear on cue, but they look more frustrated than sad. You don't trust me. After everything we've been through as a family, you don't believe in me enough to support this one chance at success. The emotional manipulation is expertly deployed, designed to reframe my reasonable caution as personal betrayal. But I've prepared for this exact response. Brooklyn, I trust you completely. That's why I want to protect you from potential scams that target aspiring models. The Better Business Bureau warns specifically about agencies that request upfront deposits for opportunities that sound too good to be true. I slide a printed article across the table. This describes exactly the pattern we're seeing: urgent deadlines, cousin connections, virtual offices, and deposit requirements. I'm not questioning your talent or potential. I'm questioning whether these people are legitimate. Trevor stands abruptly, his friendly demeanor evaporating completely. You know what? This is insulting. We came here in good faith, offering to include Rachel in an amazing opportunity, and she's treating us like criminals. I'm treating this like a business decision, which is what it should be. If you're asking me to invest $3,000, I need to see the same documentation any investor would require. Mom breaks down completely, sobbing into her hands. I can't handle this stress. The eviction notice, Brooklyn's dreams being crushed, my own daughter not trusting the family. It's too much. The performance is Academy Award worthy, but I notice she mentions an eviction notice for the first time. Yesterday she claimed to be behind on rent, today she's facing actual eviction proceedings. Mom, when did you receive an eviction notice? Through her tears, she produces a legal document that looks authentic. The letterhead matches the property management company, the formatting appears official, and the timeline indicates she has exactly 7 days to pay outstanding rent or face removal proceedings. This changes everything. Whatever else might be fake about tonight's presentation, Mom's housing crisis appears to be real and immediate. The total amount owed matches what she told me earlier, $3,600 including late fees and legal costs. Why didn't you show me this yesterday? Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to think I'm a failure as a mother and an adult. Because I hoped Brooklyn's opportunity would solve everything before it got this serious. I study the eviction. Notice carefully, looking for signs of forgery or manipulation. But everything appears legitimate, the case number, the court date, even the property manager's signature that matches samples I can find online. The realization hits like a physical blow. While Brooklyn and Trevor may be running a modeling scam, Mom's crisis is genuine. She's genuinely facing homelessness in 1 week, and I've been so focused on protecting myself from fraud that I've lost sight of the real emergency assistance my family needs. The eviction can be stopped if the full amount is paid before the court date, I say, thinking out loud. Which is exactly why we need your help with Brooklyn's deposit. Trevor jumps in quickly. The modeling contract will provide enough money to handle the rent and give Brooklyn a career start. But I'm no longer listening to Trevor's sales pitch. I'm calculating numbers and timelines, figuring out how to help Mom without enabling the modeling scam. I have a counter-proposal, I announce, pulling out my checkbook. I'll pay the eviction amount directly to your landlord tomorrow morning. That solves the immediate housing crisis. But I won't provide money for modeling deposits that can't be verified. The relief on Mom's face is genuine and heartbreaking. But Brooklyn's reaction is pure fury. So you'll help Mom but not me? You'll pay her rent but won't invest in my future? I'll help with emergencies that can be verified. I'll invest in opportunities that include proper documentation and legitimate business practices. Trevor grabs Brooklyn's hand. We don't need this negativity. There are other investors who believe in Brooklyn's potential. Then contact them, I reply calmly. But you won't be contacting me again about this particular opportunity. As they prepare to leave, Brooklyn turns back with venom in her voice. Don't come crying to me when I'm successful and you missed out on being part of it. After they're gone, Mom and I sit in her kitchen drinking coffee in exhausted silence. The pot roast remains untouched, the formal table setting now looking absurd in light of the evening's revelations. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this, Mom says finally. Are you part of the scam, Mom? She looks genuinely shocked by the question. What scam? Brooklyn found a modeling opportunity. Trevor knows people in the industry. I don't understand why you're so suspicious of everything. Her confusion appears authentic, suggesting she's been manipulated along with the rest of us. Brooklyn and Trevor have been using Mom's genuine financial crisis to add legitimacy to their fraudulent scheme. Tomorrow, I'll pay Mom's rent and help her explore more sustainable financial solutions. But tonight, I'm left wondering how many other families are being torn apart by similar combinations of real desperation and fake opportunities. The call from Mom comes at 5:47 a.m., 3 days after I paid her rent directly to Mrs. Williams. Her voice is barely audible through what sounds like uncontrollable sobbing. Rachel, you need to get over here right now. Something terrible has happened. I throw on clothes and drive to Riverside Gardens in record time, my mind racing through possibilities. Medical emergency, break-in, fire, none of the scenarios in my head prepare me for what I find when I arrive at Mom's apartment. The front door stands wide open. Inside, the living room has been systematically emptied. The television is gone, along with Mom's jewelry box, her laptop, and even the good china we used for our disastrous family dinner. But this isn't random theft, personal photos remain untouched, and cheap items with no resale value sit undisturbed. Mom sits on her bare mattress, the bed frame has been taken too, clutching a piece of paper and shaking uncontrollably. They're gone, she whispers. Brooklyn and Trevor. They took everything and left this. The note is handwritten in Brooklyn's familiar script. Mom, sorry it had to be this way. Rachel ruined everything with her paranoid questions and refusal to invest in our future. We found other investors who believe in us. We'll pay you back once the modeling career takes off. Don't try to find us. Love, B&T. I sink into the one remaining chair, apparently not valuable enough to steal, trying to process the magnitude of what's happened. My sister and her boyfriend have robbed our mother blind and fled town, leaving behind a suicide note disguised as a goodbye letter. When did you discover this? About an hour ago. I got up to make coffee and noticed the TV was missing. Then I saw the front door was unlocked. They must have come during the night. I take those sleeping pills you know about. The sleeping pills. Of course Brooklyn would know about Mom's medication routine, know exactly when she'd be unconscious and vulnerable. This wasn't impulsive theft driven by desperation, it was calculated robbery planned by someone with intimate knowledge of their victim's habits. Have you called the police? Mom shakes her head violently. I can't report my own daughter for theft. What kind of mother does that make me? The kind who's been victimized by criminals who happen to share her DNA. But I understand her reluctance. Reporting Brooklyn means admitting that the golden child, the daughter she's sacrificed for repeatedly, has repaid maternal love with betrayal and theft. It means accepting that years of financial support and emotional investment have produced a person capable of stealing from family. I walk through the apartment cataloging what's missing. Electronics, jewelry, anything small and valuable enough to convert quickly to cash. They even took Mom's prescription medications, probably planning to sell pills along with the stolen property. Did they take your bank cards? Mom checks her purse with growing panic. My debit card is gone. And my checkbook. We spend the next hour calling banks and credit card companies to freeze accounts and report theft. The bank representative explains that family members with access to accounts and personal information can cause devastating financial damage in minimal time. Mrs. Mitchell, we're showing several large withdrawals made yesterday evening using your debit card. The transactions total approximately $800, the maximum daily withdrawal limit. $800. Combined with the value of stolen property, Brooklyn and Trevor have probably netted close to $3,000 from their robbery. The exact amount they originally asked me to provide for the modeling opportunity, the timeline becomes clear as we piece together evidence. When I refused to fund their scam and offered to verify Mom's rent situation independently, they realized their con was failing. Rather than abandon the scheme, they escalated to direct theft, taking what they couldn't obtain through manipulation. But the cruelest part isn't the stolen property or drained bank account. It's the timing. They waited until after I paid Mom's rent to execute their robbery, ensuring she wouldn't become homeless while guaranteeing maximum financial damage. There's something else, Mom says, producing another piece of paper. This was tucked under the note. It's a printed email confirming 2 bus tickets to Las Vegas, purchased yesterday with Mom's stolen debit card. The departure time was 11:30 p.m., hours before Mom discovered the theft. Brooklyn and Trevor are already 1,000 miles away, probably selling stolen property and planning their next con. The modeling opportunity, the family crisis, the emotional manipulation, all of it was set up for this moment when they could disappear with maximum financial gain and minimal chance of immediate consequences. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Tell Rachel she was right about the modeling thing. But she was wrong about us being broke. Thanks for the early Christmas presents. The emoji makes my hands shake with rage. Brooklyn is literally sending taunting messages from wherever she's hiding, celebrating the successful robbery of our mother while mocking my attempts to protect the family finances. I screenshot the message and immediately forward it to Detective Hayes in Miami, along with photos of the theft scene and copies of the goodbye note. If Brooklyn and Trevor are part of a larger modeling scam operation, law enforcement needs to know they've escalated to burglary and elder abuse. Mom, we need to report this officially. Not just for the insurance claims, but because they might do this to other families. Other families? I explain what Detective Hayes told me about modeling scams, how they often involve networks of criminals who target multiple victims in different cities. Brooklyn and Trevor's operation was too sophisticated for amateurs. The fake website, the professional documentation, the psychological manipulation tactics all suggest experience with financial fraud. You think they've done this before? I think we were practice targets while they refined their methods for bigger scores. The realization that our family crisis was essentially a training exercise for professional criminals adds another layer of violation to an already devastating situation. Mrs. Williams arrives an hour later, having heard about the break-in from other tenants. Her kindness feels genuine as she surveys the damage and offers practical assistance. I've had experience with family theft situations, she says quietly. It's more common than people realize, especially in communities dealing with economic stress. The important thing is that your mother is safe and still has housing. She's right, but the safety feels temporary. Brooklyn knows mom's address, her routines, her vulnerabilities. What's to prevent them from returning for a second robbery when they run through the current stolen funds? I think mom should stay with me for a while, I tell Mrs. Williams. Until we know whether they plan to come back. Moving mom into my studio apartment will be cramped and uncomfortable. But it's better than leaving her alone and vulnerable in a space that's been compromised by people who clearly have no respect for family bonds or personal safety. That afternoon, as we pack mom's remaining belongings, I find Brooklyn's high school yearbook tucked behind her dresser. The inscription reads, "To the best mom ever, thanks for always believing in me and supporting my dreams. I'll make you proud someday. Love forever, Brooklyn." The contrast between those words and this morning's reality is heartbreaking. Somewhere between high school graduation and yesterday's robbery, my sister transformed from a hopeful young woman into someone capable of stealing from the person who loved her most. She wasn't always like this, mom says, noticing the yearbook in my hands. I know. The drugs started in college. Pills at first, then harder stuff. She'd get clean for a while, seem like her old self, then disappear for weeks and come back needing money. This is the first time mom has directly acknowledged Brooklyn's substance abuse issues. Previous family crises were always framed as temporary setbacks or bad luck, never as symptoms of deeper problems requiring professional intervention. Why didn't you tell me about the drug use? Because I kept hoping she'd get better on her own. Because I was ashamed that I couldn't help my own daughter. Because I thought if we just loved her enough and supported her enough, she'd find her way back to being the person we knew she could be. The admission explains so much about our family's financial dynamic over the past few years. The emergency loans, the bailout payments, the constant crisis management, all of it was really about funding Brooklyn's addiction while maintaining the illusion that she was struggling with temporary difficulties rather than chronic substance abuse. Trevor wasn't just a boyfriend with questionable business connections. He was probably a fellow addict, drug dealer, or both, someone who helped Brooklyn access substances while providing cover for increasingly sophisticated theft operations. As we load mom's remaining possessions into my car, I realize this betrayal might actually be a twisted form of liberation. For years, our family has been held hostage by Brooklyn's crises, draining emotional and financial resources to enable behavior that was never going to improve without professional treatment. Now that she's chosen theft over manipulation, mom can finally stop making excuses and start healing from years of codependent relationship with an addict who happened to be her daughter. The healing process will be painful and complicated. But for the first time in years, we can focus on building stability instead of constantly responding to manufactured emergencies designed to extract money from people who love someone more than that person loves herself. The FBI field office downtown feels like a fortress of justice, all concrete and steel, designed to intimidate criminals and reassure victims. Special Agent Maria Santos meets us in a conference room lined with case files and federal law enforcement commendations that speak to years of experience hunting financial predators. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry this happened to your family, Agent Santos begins, her voice carrying professional compassion earned through countless similar cases. What your daughter and her accomplice did constitutes several federal crimes: wire fraud, elder abuse, organized theft across state lines, and participation in a broader criminal enterprise." Mom sits beside me looking smaller than I've ever seen her, still struggling to accept that Brooklyn's actions require federal intervention rather than family counseling. Is she really in that much trouble? Mom asks quietly. Agent Santos opens a thick file labeled Operation Golden Ticket and spreads photographs across the table. Images of different families, bank statements, fake business documents, and surveillance photos that make my blood run cold. "Your daughter and Trevor Martinez aren't random criminals who got in over their heads," Agent Santos explains. "They're part of a sophisticated network that's been operating modeling agency scams across 6 states. We've been tracking them for 8 months. The surveillance photos show Brooklyn and Trevor meeting with other young people in hotel lobbies, restaurant parking lots, and shopping centers. Professional-looking exchanges of documents and briefcases that suggest an organized operation rather than desperate improvisation." How many families have they targeted? 43 confirmed cases involving fake modeling agencies, entertainment opportunities, and social media influencer contracts. The total financial damage exceeds $600,000, with individual losses ranging from $1,500 to $25,000 per family. I stare at the photographs, trying to reconcile the sister I grew up with and the professional criminal documented in these surveillance images. Brooklyn isn't just an addict who made bad choices. She's a skilled con artist who's been systematically destroying families for months. The pattern is always similar, Agent Santos continues. Identify families with financial stress and at least one member with stable income. Create artificial urgency around fake opportunities. Use emotional manipulation and family loyalty to overcome logical objections. Then either collect advance fees or, when that fails, escalate to direct theft. And Trevor? Trevor Martinez has a criminal history dating back 5 years. Identity theft, credit card fraud, check forgery, drug distribution. He's been recruiting young women with family connections to serve as inside sources for sophisticated financial crimes. The revelation that Brooklyn has been groomed and manipulated by an experienced criminal provides some explanation for her transformation, but it doesn't excuse the choices she made or the damage she caused to people who loved her. What happens now? We have arrest warrants issued in 3 states. Every hotel, bus station, and airport has their photographs. Their stolen property has been traced to pawn shops in Las Vegas, where they made the mistake of using fake IDs that we've been monitoring. Agent Santos slides another document across the table, a property recovery statement showing that most of Mom's stolen items have been located and seized as evidence. The electronics, jewelry, and even the prescription medications are being held pending prosecution, but they'll eventually be returned. More importantly, we've frozen several bank accounts containing proceeds from their criminal enterprise. If convicted, restitution payments will be distributed to all victims based on their documented losses. The possibility of financial recovery feels less important than the knowledge that Brooklyn and Trevor won't be able to continue targeting other families. But I'm curious about the broader implications of their arrest. Will this shut down the entire operation? Brooklyn and Trevor were mid-level players in a larger organization. Their arrests will help us identify higher-level coordinators and potentially dozens of additional victims. This is exactly the kind of break we needed to dismantle the entire network. Agent Santos explains that organized financial fraud often involves hierarchical structures where experienced criminals recruit and train younger accomplices. Brooklyn's drug addiction made her vulnerable to recruitment, while her family connections provided access to potential victims. The good news is that your refusal to provide funding and your decision to verify information independently prevented them from collecting a major score. Your family's case will actually help prosecutors demonstrate their pattern of escalating to theft when conventional manipulation fails. Over the following weeks, the investigation expands in ways that shock even law enforcement. Brooklyn and Trevor's network had connections to similar operations in 12 states, with recruitment happening through social media platforms targeting young people struggling with addiction or financial problems. The bust makes national news when arrests begin occurring simultaneously across multiple states. I watch coverage showing federal agents executing search warrants at apartments, storage facilities, and hotel rooms where evidence of massive fraud operations has been hidden. Brooklyn's arrest happens in a Las Vegas hotel room at 6 a.m., captured by news cameras that broadcast her handcuffed perp walk across every major network. She looks nothing like the sister I remember, thin from drug use, hardened by months of criminal activity, showing no remorse for the families she's helped destroy. Trevor's arrest is more dramatic, involving a high-speed chase through downtown Las Vegas that ends when he crashes a stolen car into a casino parking barrier. His mugshot reveals injuries from the crash and a dead-eyed stare that suggests someone who's lost all connection to normal human empathy. The preliminary hearings provide disturbing details about their criminal methodology. Prosecutors present evidence that Brooklyn specifically targeted our family because she knew my financial situation and Mom's emotional vulnerabilities. The modeling scam wasn't a desperate improvisation, it was a calculated operation designed to extract maximum money from people who trusted her. Miss Mitchell demonstrated sophisticated planning and premeditation, the federal prosecutor states during Brooklyn's arraignment. She created fake business documents, coordinated with accomplices across state lines, and when conventional fraud failed, escalated to elder abuse and burglary. This represents the highest levels of financial exploitation involving family relationships. Brooklyn's attorney argues for leniency based on her addiction and claims that she was manipulated by more experienced criminals. But the evidence shows active participation in recruitment and training of other accomplices, suggesting leadership rather than victimization. The victim impact statements provide heartbreaking testimony from families across multiple states. Elderly couples who lost retirement savings to fake investment opportunities. Single mothers who borrowed against their homes to fund children's supposed modeling careers. College students who depleted their education funds for social media influencer contracts that never materialized. When my turn comes to address the court, I struggle to find words that capture the complexity of being victimized by someone you love. Your Honor, the financial damage to my family is significant but recoverable, I begin. The emotional damage from learning that my sister spent months planning to rob and abandon our mother is something we'll be dealing with for years. Brooklyn didn't just steal money and property, she stole our ability to trust family relationships and feel safe in our own homes. The sentencing hearing occurs 6 months later, after Brooklyn accepts a plea agreement to avoid trial. She receives 8 years in federal prison for her role in the conspiracy, with requirements for drug treatment and restitution payments to all victims. Trevor receives 12 years due to his leadership role and extensive criminal history. The judge specifically mentions his grooming and manipulation of vulnerable young women as an aggravating factor that warrants enhanced punishment. Mr. Martinez, you preyed on families during their most vulnerable moments, exploiting love and loyalty to fund criminal enterprises, Judge Richardson states. Your actions represent a fundamental betrayal of the social bonds that hold communities together. The day of sentencing, Mom and I sit in the courthouse gallery watching Brooklyn in her orange jumpsuit, hands shackled, looking like a stranger wearing my sister's face. When given the opportunity to address victims, she reads a prepared statement. That sounds hollow and rehearsed. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused my family and other victims. I was struggling with addiction and made choices that hurt people I love. I hope someday to make amends for what I've done. The words feel empty. Because they focus on her addiction rather than acknowledging the calculated nature of her crimes. She's still positioning herself as someone who made mistakes rather than someone who chose to systematically exploit family relationships for criminal profit. After the hearing, Agent Santos provides updates on the broader investigation. Brooklyn and Trevor's arrests led to the discovery of training materials, victim databases, and recruitment protocols that helped law enforcement dismantle the entire network. 67 people have been arrested across 12 states, she reports. Total financial recovery exceeds $2 million. Most importantly, we've disrupted recruitment operations that were targeting college campuses and addiction treatment centers. The scope of the criminal enterprise makes our family's experience feel both smaller and larger simultaneously. Smaller because we were just one target among dozens. Larger because our case helped expose systematic exploitation affecting hundreds of families. Mom receives a check for $3,200 from the restitution fund, nearly equal to what Brooklyn stole when she robbed the apartment. But the money feels less important than the knowledge that justice has been served and other families have been protected. Do you think she'll really change? Mom asks as we drive home from the courthouse. I think 8 years in federal prison will definitely change her. Whether it changes her into someone better or someone more dangerous is up to Brooklyn. The question of redemption and forgiveness looms over everything that happens next. Brooklyn is still Mom's daughter, still the child who wrote loving yearbook inscriptions and dreamed of making her family proud. But she's also a convicted federal criminal who chose to rob her own mother rather than face the consequences of her addiction. Learning to live with both truths simultaneously becomes the foundation for whatever healing might be possible in the years ahead. 2 years after Brooklyn's sentencing, I'm standing in the kitchen of my new 2-bedroom apartment, preparing dinner for Mom's weekly visit, when the call comes that changes everything. The caller ID shows Federal Bureau of Prisons, a number that still makes my heart race even though I know it's probably routine correspondence about Brooklyn's status. Ms. Mitchell? This is Warden Patricia Walsh from Federal Correctional Institution, Dublin. I'm calling regarding your sister Brooklyn Mitchell, inmate number 47,829 to 198. My hands go cold. Is she hurt? No, ma'am. I'm calling because Brooklyn has requested to speak with you about a matter of significant importance to an ongoing federal investigation. She claims to have information about additional criminal activity that could help law enforcement recover funds for other victims. The request catches me completely off guard. For 2 years, Brooklyn's letters have focused on prison programs, commissary requests, and carefully worded apologies that never quite acknowledged the full scope of what she did to our family. Now she wants to cooperate with federal authorities. What kind of information? I can't discuss specifics over the phone. But the FBI agents working the case believe Brooklyn may have knowledge about criminal operations that continued after her arrest. They're requesting a meeting to evaluate whether her information is credible and valuable enough to warrant consideration for sentence reduction. Sentence reduction. The possibility that Brooklyn might serve less than her full 8-year term feels complicated in ways I struggle to process. Part of me wants her to face every consequence of her choices. Another part recognizes that helping other victims recover their losses might represent genuine remorse rather than strategic manipulation. I need to think about this. Of course, if you decide to participate, the meeting would take place here at the facility with federal agents present. Brooklyn specifically requested that you and your mother be involved in any cooperation discussions. After hanging up, I call Mom immediately. Her reaction mirrors my own confusion and ambivalence. Do you think she's really changed, or is this another manipulation? Mom asks. I don't know. But if she has information that could help other families get their money back, maybe we owe it to them to at least listen. The decision to visit Brooklyn requires careful consideration and consultation with Dr. Hendricks, our family therapist who's helped us navigate the complicated emotions surrounding Brooklyn's imprisonment. During our emergency session, she helps us establish boundaries and expectations for what could be an emotionally charged encounter. Remember that people can demonstrate change without that change being permanent, Dr. Hendricks counsels. Brooklyn may genuinely want to help other victims while still being incapable of taking full responsibility for her own actions. Those aren't mutually exclusive possibilities. The advice proves prescient when Mom and I arrive at Federal Correctional Institution Dublin 3 days later. The facility is more modern and less intimidating than I expected, but the security procedures, metal detectors, background checks, supervised visiting rooms, serve as stark reminders that Brooklyn is here because she committed serious federal crimes. Brooklyn looks different when she enters the meeting room accompanied by 2 FBI agents. Thinner but healthier than her arrest photos, with shorter hair and the kind of institutional composure that comes from adapting to highly structured environments. She's wearing standard prison khakis and carrying a manila folder thick with documents. "Thank you for coming," she says quietly, her eyes meeting mine briefly before shifting to Mom. "I know this is probably the last thing you wanted to do." Agent Santos, who handled the original investigation, facilitates the meeting with professional efficiency. "Brooklyn, why don't you explain what information you believe might be helpful to ongoing investigations?" Brooklyn opens her folder and spreads out hand-drawn organizational charts, lists of names, and detailed notes about criminal operations. The documentation is extensive and methodical, clearly the product of months of careful recollection and analysis. "Trevor wasn't just running modeling scams," Brooklyn begins. "He was part of a much larger identity theft and financial fraud network that operated across 15 states. While we were in Las Vegas, I met coordinators who were running elaborate romance scams, fake charity operations, and investment frauds targeting elderly victims." The scope of criminal activity she describes is staggering. Network organizers who recruited vulnerable young people through social media and addiction treatment centers. Training camps where recruits learned psychological manipulation techniques. And document forgery. Sophisticated money laundering operations that moved stolen funds through cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore banking systems. The modeling agency scam was just one of dozens of different cons they were running simultaneously, Brooklyn continues. "Trevor and I were small players in an organization that was stealing millions of dollars annually from families across the country." Agent Santos takes detailed notes while asking probing questions about names, locations, and operational procedures. Brooklyn's answers demonstrate knowledge that goes far beyond her role in the modeling scam, suggesting she had access to information about the broader criminal enterprise. "Why are you sharing this now?" I ask, needing to understand her motivations. Brooklyn's composure cracks slightly. "Because I've spent 2 years in drug treatment programs learning to take responsibility for what I did. And because I've met other women here who were also recruited into financial fraud operations when they were struggling with addiction and desperation." She pulls out another document, a letter from a fellow inmate whose story parallels Brooklyn's own recruitment into criminal activity. Maria was 19 when her boyfriend convinced her to use her family connections to run inheritance scams. Jessica was recruited through a fake modeling agency just like the one Trevor and I were operating. Sarah started with identity theft to fund her heroin addiction and ended up coordinating elaborate insurance frauds. The pattern Brooklyn describes is deeply disturbing: criminal organizations systematically targeting young women with addiction issues, family connections, and limited legitimate opportunities. These women become both perpetrators and victims, exploiting their own families while being exploited by more sophisticated criminal operators. The people running these networks specifically look for women with stable family backgrounds because families are more likely to provide financial support and less likely to report crimes to law enforcement, Brooklyn explains. "They taught us exactly how to identify and manipulate family members who had savings or good credit." Mom speaks for the first time since the meeting began. "So everything you did to us was planned and calculated from the beginning?" Brooklyn nods, tears starting to flow. "Trevor mapped out our entire family's financial situation before we ever approached you about the modeling opportunity. He knew about Rachel's savings, your rent situation, even your medication schedule for planning the robbery." The admission is devastating but also clarifying. "Our family wasn't randomly targeted by desperate criminals, we were systematically researched and manipulated by people who made a science of exploiting family relationships for financial gain. But here's what the FBI needs to understand," Brooklyn continues, addressing Agent Santos directly. "These operations are still running. The people who recruited and trained Trevor are still out there, still targeting families, still teaching other young women how to steal from the people who love them. She provides names, locations, and operational details about criminal enterprises in Nevada, California, Arizona, and Texas. The information includes specific addresses where money laundering operations are housed, names of coordinators who recruit new participants, and detailed descriptions of training procedures used to turn vulnerable young people into sophisticated financial predators. This intelligence could help us dismantle operations that are currently victimizing hundreds of families, Agent Santos confirms. But we need to verify the accuracy of Brooklyn's information before making any commitments about sentence reduction. Over the following months, Brooklyn's cooperation proves invaluable to federal law enforcement. Her information leads to coordinated raids across multiple states that result in over 90 arrests and the seizure of assets worth more than $4 million. More importantly, the operations she helped expose were actively recruiting new participants and targeting new victims when law enforcement shut them down. The sentence reduction hearing takes place 6 months after our initial prison meeting. Brooklyn's cooperation has helped identify and prosecute criminal operators responsible for victimizing over 300 families. The recovery of stolen assets has enabled restitution payments to victims who thought they'd never see their money again. Miss Mitchell's cooperation has been extraordinary, the federal prosecutor states during the hearing. Her information directly led to the dismantling of criminal enterprises that were causing ongoing harm to vulnerable populations. While this doesn't excuse her original crimes, it demonstrates genuine commitment to preventing future victimization. Brooklyn's sentence is reduced from 8 years to 5 years, with eligibility for supervised release after serving 4 years if she completes all prison programs and maintains cooperation with ongoing investigations. The reduction feels appropriate given the scope of her assistance, though it also means she'll be returning to society sooner than we'd anticipated. Are you prepared for her to be released in 2 years? Dr. Hendricks asks during our next therapy session. The question forces Mom and me to confront feelings we've been avoiding. Brooklyn's cooperation with law enforcement suggests genuine remorse and desire to make amends, but it doesn't automatically restore trust or guarantee that she won't relapse into addiction and criminal behavior. I'm proud that she chose to help other victims, Mom says carefully. But I'm also terrified of falling back into old patterns of enabling her if she struggles with reintegration. The fear is legitimate. Statistics on recidivism among people with both addiction and criminal histories are sobering. Even with the best intentions and program completion, the challenges of rebuilding life after federal prison are enormous. We need to start planning now for what boundaries and expectations we'll have when she's released, I suggest. Clear agreements about housing, financial support, and contact with the family. Dr. Hendricks helps us draft a preliminary reintegration plan that prioritizes accountability and sustained recovery over immediate family reconciliation. Brooklyn will need to demonstrate stable housing, legitimate employment, and ongoing addiction treatment before we consider regular family contact. Any requests for financial assistance will require verification and approval from her probation officer. Most importantly, Brooklyn will need to participate in family therapy sessions focused specifically on making amends for the harm she caused to our relationships. The work will require her to acknowledge not just the criminal aspects of her behavior, but the emotional damage caused by violating family trust and exploiting maternal love for criminal purposes. Forgiveness isn't something you grant immediately. When someone gets out of prison, Dr. Hendricks explains, it's something you build together over time through consistent actions and rebuilt trust. Meanwhile, Mom and I continue building lives that don't revolve around managing Brooklyn's crises or choices. Mom's involvement in the financial abuse support group has grown into a leadership role coordinating resources for families affected by addiction-related financial crimes. Her personal experience provides credibility and compassion that helps other parents navigate the complex emotions of being victimized by their own children. Yesterday I talked to a mother whose son stole her retirement funds to buy drugs, Mom tells me during one of our weekly dinners. She was struggling with whether to report him to police or try to handle it privately. I shared our story and helped her understand that sometimes reporting crimes is the most loving thing you can do. The support group has expanded to include monthly educational workshops on topics like recognizing financial manipulation, protecting assets from family members with addiction issues, and navigating the legal system when relatives commit financial crimes. The program has helped over 40 families in the past year, preventing an estimated $250,000 in additional financial abuse. My own career has evolved in directions I never anticipated. The experience with Brooklyn's case led to specialization in family financial fraud investigations that eventually resulted in a promotion to senior investigator and opportunities to train other insurance professionals in recognizing and preventing financial exploitation. I never thought I'd be grateful for what Brooklyn put us through, I tell Mom. But the skills I learned protecting our family have become tools for protecting other families from similar situations. The work feels meaningful in ways that extend beyond professional achievement. Every family I help protect from financial manipulation, every elderly person I assist in avoiding romance scams, every young person I help recognize recruitment tactics for criminal enterprises, all of it feels connected to lessons learned during our family's darkest period. My relationship with Marcus has deepened into something I never thought possible after experiencing such profound betrayal from someone I trusted completely. His patience with my trust issues, combined with his own professional understanding of financial crimes, has created a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values rather than emotional drama or rescue fantasies. Marcus proposed last night, I tell Mom over dinner, showing her the simple but elegant engagement ring that reflects his understanding of my preferences for practicality over ostentation. Mom's reaction is pure joy, untainted by complicated family dynamics or financial concerns. Oh honey, I'm so happy for you. He's exactly the kind of man who will support your goals instead of trying to exploit your generosity. The engagement feels like a milestone in recovery, evidence that it's possible to build healthy relationships. After experiencing betrayal from family members, Marcus knows our entire story, including the ongoing complexities of Brooklyn's eventual release, and he's committed to supporting whatever boundaries we establish for future family interactions. Planning a wedding while Brooklyn is still in prison creates its own emotional complications. Part of me wants her to be included in this important life event, while another part recognizes that her presence would overshadow what should be a celebration of new beginnings and healthy relationships. What matters most is that you and Marcus start your marriage with clear boundaries and shared values, Dr. Hendricks counsels. Brooklyn's situation doesn't need to determine how you celebrate your relationship. We decided to plan a small ceremony focused on the people who've supported our healing and growth over the past few years. Mom, Marcus's family, friends from work, and members of our support group, people who understand the journey we've taken to reach this point of stability and hope. 6 months before the wedding, Brooklyn sends a letter that differs significantly from her previous correspondence. Instead of focusing on prison programs or commissary requests, she writes specifically about understanding the harm she caused, and her commitment to earning forgiveness through sustained action rather than words. I know that my cooperation with law enforcement doesn't erase what I did to our family, she writes. I also know that saying sorry isn't enough to rebuild trust that I destroyed through my choices. When I'm released, I want to focus on proving through my actions that I've genuinely changed, not just learned to say the right words. The letter includes specific commitments about maintaining sobriety, participating in ongoing therapy, and respecting whatever boundaries Mom and I establish for contact and interaction. Most importantly, it acknowledges that rebuilding family relationships will require years of consistent behavior rather than dramatic gestures or emotional appeals. She sounds different, Mom observes after reading the letter. More mature and realistic about what recovery actually requires. Whether the change is genuine or simply reflects better coaching from prison counselors remains to be determined through time and action. But the tone suggests possibilities for eventual reconciliation based on accountability and mutual respect rather than guilt and enabling. As I prepare for marriage and Mom continues building her new life, we both carry forward lessons learned through surviving financial exploitation by someone we loved. Trust can be rebuilt, but it requires consistent action over time. Family loyalty doesn't require sacrificing personal financial security. Love sometimes means enforcing boundaries rather than providing endless second chances. Most importantly, we've learned that healing from betrayal is possible when people commit to building healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than fear, guilt, or obligation. Brooklyn's story isn't finished, but our story has evolved beyond being defined by her choices and actions. 2 years from now, when Brooklyn is released, we'll discover whether she's genuinely committed to earning redemption through sustained action. Until then, we continue building lives centered on our own values and goals, secure in the knowledge that we survived something that could have destroyed us and emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable of protecting what matters most. The framed eviction notice that still hangs in Mom's apartment serves as a daily reminder that crisis can become catalyst for positive change when people choose growth over enabling, boundaries over blind loyalty, and hope tempered by wisdom earned through surviving betrayal by those we trusted most. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.